Tell us how you do therapy different.
My approach is really improv in the sense that I can't just train in one modality and then expect everybody to fit into that box. Everybody is so unique, is so different, their histories, their traumas, their childhood, their financial state, their religion. So to me, it's really about looking at the person. And while one person I may say, I think this is a great idea for you, the other person I may say, that's actually the worst thing for you to do. So it's not like I believe in one modality more than the other than what does the person need?
Welcome to the Mindfulness in Motion podcast, the show that helps you move beyond the checklist of life and into a world of joy and meaning and discovery. I am your host, Corey, and I am so glad you, our listeners, and you, our guests, are here with us today. Today we have Mordy. He is a men's mental health therapist who helps men heal from shame, anxiety, and disconnection through experiential movement-based therapy, I love this. I'm really excited to talk about this. I think this is so great. In this conversation, we are exploring how mindfulness in motion through body awareness and emotional presence can help us reconnect with our authentic lives and our authentic selves. If you've ever struggled to express your emotions or to slow down enough to feel what's really going on inside, this episode will open your eyes to a different kind of mindfulness that moves you. So let's dive in. Welcome, Mordy. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Really excited to be here and for our conversation and to help people. Really, that's what this is all about. How do we so much of the knowledge and that I have that I share with people? I wish I would have known at the beginning of my journey. It would have helped me so much. And now we finally have, but I grew up, there was no podcast, even though I'm not that old. There's no such thing. So this knowledge was unavailable. There was no YouTube. So now that we have these opportunities, it's great to be able to share with people. And for me, to be able to learn so much from other people in a way that's really easy and practical.
Yes, I love that. That speaks right to why we're doing this too. That I love bringing people together who are using these therapeutic modalities in different ways and really being able to help people engage in their lives so they bring more joy into their life. And it's not so disconnected. This idea of like, mindfulness has to be something you do quietly on a mat, or as we just sort of previewed before we hit record, was therapy maybe doesn't always have to just be laying on a couch talking and
Right.
pouring out your deepest things, or I'm not sure. So tell us how you do therapy different with your patients, I guess, or clients, and particularly men. But yeah, how do you approach it differently?
My approach is really improv in the sense that I can't just train in one modality and then expect everybody to fit into that box.
Mm.
Everybody is so unique, is so different, their histories, their traumas, their childhood, their financial state, their religion. So to me, it's really about looking at the person. And while one person I may say, I think this is a great idea for you, the other person I may say, that's actually the worst thing for you to do. So it's not like I believe in one modality more than the other than what does the person need? And for me, the unfortunate reality is that talk therapy doesn't help for a lot of people. Right? There are people that come in, they talk, they get understanding, and they get healed. And that's awesome. And I wish that was my journey. I wish it was true for the people that I work with. The people that I work with generally have tried. Many, they've been in therapy for a long time. They tried a lot of top down approaches, very heady. Let me understand my problem. Let me know how my childhood affects me now. Yet they know everything. Like I tell my clients, I said, we could switch places. You know everything about yourself. Sure, I could help you find a little nuance there, a little nuance there. That's not your issue. Your issue is not knowledge because unfortunately, I believe knowledge is not power. Because if knowledge was power, everyone would have been healed already, especially nowadays. Knowledge is free, it's all there. So, how come people aren't healed? To me, the answer is because knowledge is not power. Just because I know my story, I know where my problems come from, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be able to heal. Because to me, healing begins in the body. And that's really a place that most people don't, funny to say, think about when we're talking about the body, don't know about. And it's much more vulnerable, it's much more tender, and the reality is much more scary. Because what we're really doing, I find, we're really running away from ourselves. And what that means is I'm really running away from my body. I don't feel comfortable here. So I do is I get stuck in my head. I think about it, I obsess, I wonder, I analyze. What I'm forgetting is that this body doesn't feel safe. This body doesn't feel held. So for me, any therapy or any modality that's not taking into account the body may not be as effective. And for those people that have been struggling for a long time and are not getting well, instead of blaming themselves, which we tend to do, or instead of as clinicians, we blame them and say, oh, if you just wanted it, you would have done it. I say, no, 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 no. Have you ever taken a look at your body and how unsafe it feels?
Mm.
And that opens up a whole new way of treatment that's way different than what everyone else is doing.
I love that. When we start with people in the water, we ask people, they think they're coming to learn how to move their arms and legs, which is the body, but it's still very top down. It's still very like, tell me what to do with my physical body, and I will do that, and then everything will be okay, right? But then when we ask people to say, no, we want you or would like you, your invitation is to feel what's happening in your body. Is it calm or is it anxious? Because the movement you're going to create, if you're calm or you're anxious, is going to be very different. And people have a like, wait a sec, I don't know if I'm calm or anxious. Like, I don't know
Right.
if I want to get into the water or not. This isn't something they've thought about. So, how do people, when you ask them to feel their body or to connect with their body, how do they react to that? How does that go for them in the beginning?
Unfortunately, the people that are coming to me, by that time, they've tried so many different modalities and they're sort of burnt out. So when I offer them something that's even though different and maybe they never heard of, all of a sudden they start having more compassion for themselves because they're like, oh, my body is a lot bigger than my head. And all I've been doing is spending time up here. I never thought about healing this part of me. It makes sense to them conceptually, yet to actually experience it and go there is very, very challenging. It's scary. It's terrifying, so there's this sense of, okay, maybe this could work because this is something new. And this is something new. So I'm really scared. And what I remind people, and this is terrifying for people, it's the exact opposite of what I used to do. Early on in my career, I was more into exposure, forcing people to do it anyways, encouraging them. And that's what I believed in because that's the best I knew at that time. And what I realized today is that if somebody doesn't feel safe to do something, I'd rather them not do it than push themselves to do it.
Mm.
Because when they do something that's unsafe, what they're telling their body is, I don't listen to you. You telling me this is unsafe, I don't listen to that. I just do whatever I want. And that makes people feel more dysregulated. And while people may say, oh, Morty, you're just telling me to avoid, I say, no, 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 no. I'm telling you to stop running into a burning building. That's all I'm telling you. Like, what do you mean? Your body's telling you it's not safe to go here. It's not safe to make this phone call. Don't do it. That's very hard for people to hear, especially in a society where we're told just force it through and it's going to be better. And I find a lot of times less is more, but it's not
Mhm.
sexy. It's not cool. It's not, yes, it's more of, oh, I'm slowing down. I'm stopping. I'm taking a pause. And that's what they need.
So good. Yes. How many times we have told our students we're cheering for them when they say no. It's a difference between a no of avoiding, like before people, in our instance, come out to learn to swim. They've just avoided it. They've avoided the vacations. They've avoided the places that they're going to have to interface with the water, let their spouse take the kid to swimming lessons. That's avoiding. And that's different than being, like you're saying, being in a powerful choice. I've tuned in, I've listened, I've given a little space to actually check in, to see how I feel, to see what's going on. And then I'm deciding no is the right option in this moment right now. So much more powerful than yes, doing it anyways and practicing. We're really just practicing. You said dysregulation. I would say it's practicing the feeling that you don't ultimately want. Is that how you want your life to feel? Then we have to stop practicing that.
And that's exactly the point, which is when somebody is able to say, no, I will not do this because it feels unsafe. What happens right after that, many times, then they start feeling safe. It's this paradox. Now, you can't do it. I'm going to say I'm safe so that then I'll feel safe. No, no, the body doesn't, the body's smarter
You
than that
can't trick it. You can't
and
be
trick it.
tricky.
But if I truly say, if I don't feel safe for your case to go into the water, I will not go. And I was like, oh, okay. All of a sudden it lightens up. And as we could talk about, also people just see things in extremes. Like either I'm going into the water and putting my head under, or I don't go in at all. And it's like, No, could we just start by dipping your toe in?
Hmm.
Maybe that's safe. It's not safe to go all the way in. And I think that's another important piece that people miss is it's not all or nothing when it comes to safety. If there's a text message that I don't want to send because it doesn't feel safe, I would tell the client, don't send it. But what could you do that is safety? He's like, well, I could write the text message. Great. So I just do that. There's so many nuances and layers that we forget about. And that's really important for people to realize.
Hmm. Yes, definitely. This all or nothing makes me think of my 20-year-old, still in very all or nothing brain. And yeah, as we mature, there's so many more nuances to life. What becomes available to people? How does it change people's experience in their life when they practice this slowing down and pausing and choosing yes or no? What kinds of changes do you see for them in their lives?
So I call that, first of all, instead of calling that mindfulness, I made up a new word. It's called bodyfulness. Doesn't have as good of a lingo as mindfulness, but maybe people start using it, it'll start. But it's really about bodyfulness. And what
Uh-huh.
people are able to experience is freedom. That's really the invitation what I'm offering people. It's if I don't feel safe in the world, that comes up in every area of my life, and it's constantly an uphill battle. I'm pushing myself, I'm forcing myself. It's so hard. What would it be like if it wasn't so hard? If you started practicing safety, and after a while, your body's like, I could trust you to really protect me. So I'm only really going to let you know when it's unsafe, when you're really in danger. Because other than that, it's okay. You could take risks. I know that you'll be there for me. And as soon as it gets too much, you'll be there to protect me. So what looks like a lot of times for people as avoidance or OCD or just staying in bed all day, and they're like, well, what am I supposed to do? I just feel so stuck. I feel so unsafe. And the safer that you feel, sort of the burden and this weight of everything being an uphill battle, it sort of becomes the opposite. It's like, oh, I could just run. I could just do things. I just feel safe. And that's a freedom that you only know it when you have it. So while I could
Mm.
try to explain it to people, they're not going to truly get it till they experience that.
Yeah. I'm thinking about in my own personal work. I am, as most people are, one of my ways I sabotage is to avoid, right? Avoid doing things. And the power of this, like doing one step, right? The one tiny thing, not doing all of it, but doing that one tiny thing. And then, so I'm curious if you have this piece in it too. I know what's really useful for me as well that I haven't incorporated in the past, but is then to really, truly, authentically celebrate that piece and really, truly acknowledge that one tiny step. Because I've done one small step before, it kind of doesn't hold. And I think there's a part of me that discounts that stuff, even though I do it with my students all the time. I know it's
Sure.
all about the small steps, right? But then for myself, of having this piece of actually really authentically, deeply acknowledging and celebrating those steps. Is this a piece that you're doing in your, and I love your term, bodyfulness? I might have to go like change the title of my podcast now. Because actually, this is what I'm trying to bring to people. So I so love that you said it. So I'll start using that word, help generate it forward.
So to me, while of course it's important to celebrate the small victories, the small wins, to me, and this is going to sound counterintuitive, and I said this today to a client, and I was surprised that I even said it. And I'm like, I don't know if this is true, but it just came out of me. Like that's the beautiful thing about improv, and really all therapists and healers are doing improv. We have no idea before what's the client's going to do, and we have no idea what we're going to say. So, hi, all improv people out there, and really everyone's living improv lives. Do I know what my child's going to tell me? No, my child tells me something, I just react. So that's really it's all improv. But to me, not only will I celebrate the win of taking the small step, I would really tune in and acknowledge to myself the reason why I'm not doing this while we may call it avoidance, is because it doesn't feel safe. And to me, I want to celebrate that, that I'm no longer going to force myself. I'm going to do a small step that feels safe. To me, I celebrate when I make a decision to not do something. And then my whole life, I called myself avoidant, OCD, all the names that were given to me and all the labels. I rather celebrate in standing up for my body and saying, this doesn't
Mm.
feel safe. This to me is like going into a raging river. That's what it feels like to me. So of course I'm not going to do it. Because when I tell myself I'm avoiding, this is the other piece, is words have stories, right? If I say avoidance, I have a whole story. Avoidance is a bad thing. I really shouldn't be doing it. If I tell myself I'm not avoiding, this doesn't feel safe, all of a sudden I'm a hero. I
Mm,
am promoting safety for myself. And that's why when I speak to clients, I say, I don't want to hear feeling words. Like, what do you mean you want to hear feeling words? We're all about feelings. I say, I don't want to hear them because when you say that you're feeling anger, you have a story attached to that. When you tell me I'm feeling tightness in my shoulders, which is your embodiment of anger, you don't have a story attached to that. We don't have to go into your head and deal with that narrative that you were given as a child and really have the opportunity just to go straight to the body. So to me, words are so important and attitude is so important. And I want to celebrate, to me, celebrate safety. That's
mm,
really what I want to celebrate.
mm. So good. Yeah, I think about how many times for my swim students, they will say things like, their dream is to be able to, has a picture behind me, is to go out and to do some tropical swim, right? To be in the ocean, to like scuba dive or snorkel or something like that. And they say, and it's my dream to be able to do it without a life jacket. And, we spend a lot of time deconstructing that of like, why does it matter if you have a life jacket or not? If you are and feel physically safe because you are not going to sink 100%, you're not going to sink, then why are we saying the caveat to having fun is to do it without this sense of not only a sense of safety, but a reality of it in terms of not sinking? And yeah, it gives people a different way of thinking like, oh, yeah, I don't need to let go of safety in order to have fun. It's such a, as you say, a story that we hold out there that our lives have to look a particular way in order to feel good or be right or that sort of thing. So,
And a great analogy I just thought of as you're talking about that is just like wearing a seatbelt. Like it's just like to me, there's nothing wrong with trying to keep myself safe. I wear a helmet when I bike ride. Does it look pathetic or weak or like I'm a loser? No, I just fucking want to take care of myself. Like that's it. Not that big of a deal.
yep. For sure. Yes, yes. Those seatbelts. Yeah, you never say that wearing a seatbelt means you're a bad driver.
Right.
It actually is a sign of being a really good driver. It's a sign of you being proactive in the world, taking care of that physical safety. And yeah, and it's our job to be able to do that for ourselves. That's great. So tell me now, when you're working with folks, so you're having them, like you indicated about feeling the tension in their body, to go right into their body. Are there other kinds of things that you're doing to help people activate the connection with their body? And I love too how you said our brain is such a small percentage wise of our body. Yeah, the rest from our neck down. I mean, maybe even you could say from your eyeballs down, right? Your brain is just in the very top of your cranium. But so are there things and ways that you're doing to help people drop in their body and to be able to sense this idea of safety or not safety?
Sure. So many different things. And of course, I recognize that we have a brain. I acknowledge that. I own that. I appreciate mine. There also is sometimes a piece that needs to be done with that because part of the reason why I get dysregulated or activated or don't feel safe in my body is because my brain, the way that I view it, and not everyone resonates with these words necessarily, but a lot of us has images in our head. If I think about water, I may think of a scene in an ocean of a movie where somebody drowned. So if I have these images in my head, my body's going to feel not good. So one of the other modalities that I do, and we could that to really alleviate that, meaning how do I get the mind to stop playing these images or stop telling the body, really the amygdala, which is our safety mechanism, the fire alarm, how do I get that to lower itself? Because if I could get that to not be so loud, then our bodies are not going to be as activated, and then it's easier for us to go there. So there's a modality that I do. We could probably have a whole episode on it. I'll just share about it briefly so that if people are like, I just want to get well. I don't want to sit in therapy for 9 years talking about my childhood and my past. I really just want to get well. I've tried a lot of things. There's a therapy called accelerated resolution therapy, which is a bilateral stimulation therapy that's really gentle and works pretty effectively and pretty quickly, and especially good for people that had traumas or to get somebody almost drowned, let's say. Of course, they're not going to want to go swimming again. Okay, but what happens if we went in there and we did with eye movements, we had their brain reprocess what happened to them, and they no longer see themselves being drowning. They see themselves, instead of seeing, they see themselves relaxing on a beach chair by the pool. They change those images. And the activation in the body wouldn't be as much because the brain is no longer, tripping off those images that happened to them. So I just want to put it out there as like a FYI. If you need help, there's art therapy modalities out there that could help you. So don't give up. I always tell my
Mm.
clients 85 things you need to try before you give up hope. Like, even if it doesn't work with me, we got lots of modalities, right? So part of, I don't know if you want to say anything on that, or I could go to your question. I just want to focus on
No,
one point.
I am curious on that in terms of, so you gave it a name. Tell me the name again of the modality.
Accelerated
Uh-huh.
resolution therapy.
Now, is this the same as EMDR, or is it a similar or in the same kind of family? EMDR being the eye movement, doing eye right and left, or
Yeah, that's it. It's the cousin of EMDR. We use bilateral
okay.
stimulation. I'm biased because that's what I'm trained in. It's a very
Mm,
gentle modality. The real problem with it is only really one problem. It's gonna sound funny, but it's a real problem. It works too quickly. I had a client that came into me this week. He said, "Mordy, I can no longer do this therapy." I said, "Why not?" I'm like, "Is it not working?" He's like, "No, it's great. It's helpful." I'm like, "Hey, let's do it on more things." He said, "I feel so invalidated because I'm coming in with all these issues, for 10 years, and you're doing these sessions, and I'm really having rapid shifts." Like, this guy came in one session 2 weeks ago. He was really activated about a whole number of things. By the end of the session, he felt totally at peace. And he didn't talk about his problems. All we did more or less was use eye movements. So the problem with this therapy is, and unfortunately, the way that our system has been built and people believe, is that healing has to take a long time.
mm.
Healing has to take forever. And I will remind people most of the time, especially if you had like a specific trauma event, like a one-time life event that happened to you. I said, "How long did it take for you to get hurt?" Like, "What do you mean? It took 1 minute. I got abused." I said to them, "Right. So for the last 20 years, it was just this one moment it kept replaying and replaying and replaying. What happens if we go back and we change that one moment? Does it have to take 6 months?" And they're like, "I don't know. I guess not."
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's the other piece is as we try modalities, especially modalities that are beyond talking, people can expect or hope for and believe in that their solution could come a lot quicker than what society tells them. It doesn't not have to be a 9 month process. Some people it needs to be. You have complex trauma, ongoing childhood abuse. We're in for the long haul over here. And for most people that didn't experience that, I guess hopefully they didn't experience that, your healing could literally come in one session or two sessions or three sessions. Just be open to that because it really could happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've experienced that with some healing modalities myself,
Right.
that blew me out of the water, so to speak.
I don't know.
Yeah, that it really can. And it's interesting how you talk about that piece of a trauma, an incident, and it could be big T traumas, but it could even be
Yes.
these smaller T things like, my spouse got upset or my spouse looked at me in a particular way and I made it mean all these things. And I have this, it's the conversation in our head afterwards. It's the repeating of what we think about that event, what the meaning we put on that event, the story, all those kinds of things. Yeah, that really makes it, cements it, and it kind of brings it down into our body. But yeah, the actual piece of it, that kernel start there.
And this one you could take to the bank. This is my new saying. This one I think you could take to the bank. I think it's true. No, I know it's true. If I am stuck in my head, it means that I'm afraid to be in my body.
Hmm.
That's the whole thing. Like that's how simple it is. How do you be in the body? We could talk about it. And that's really what it is. Our solution is not in my head. It's I'm running away from my body. For a lot of people, it's the uncomfortable sensations that they feel in their body. They don't want to experience that or go there. Safer to hang out in our heads. And I'm stuck in my head. I just go to my body.
Absolutely. Yeah. A few episodes ago, we had a person on who's a good friend of mine, and we were talking about cold water exposure. And
Love that.
yeah, that was a thing I did, once a week for 52 weeks, got into cold water for the purpose of, it's really difficult not to be in your body when you're experiencing those kinds of sensations. And it was this practice of allowing myself to feel the sensation in the body on purpose that wasn't dangerous. I knew I was safe cognitively and, physically. I
Sure.
was safe. I wasn't staying in for 15 minutes or something. Staying in for an amount of time that was just enough amount of time for me to practice being okay with feeling what was happening in my body and to be present to it, because adults are, I think, I don't know, happens around 8 years old or something like this. I'm not real versed in childhood, but where we start to go from really learning through the body, and then we start to really give a lot of credit and a lot of feedback to what we're learning from our brain. And I think, somewhere in that childhood time, we're starting to get more rewards for what's happening in our brain and less rewards from dipping into our bodies. Is that something that you have found? Or
Yeah, I mean, that's deep because what you're saying is right. As children, they start going to school, and if a child says, I don't want to do homework, which to me, it means I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable. Safe might sound like it's too extreme, but that's really what it is. I don't feel okay doing it. We don't celebrate that. We say, let's go. Only your mind, only the grades you get in school. A child says, no, I won't do this, meaning their body is saying, this is not okay for me. I don't want to give grandma a hug right now. And what do we
mm,
say? You must do it. So we're teaching children that really what you do is important, what you don't do or avoid is not important. But really, so many times kids are avoiding things that don't feel safe for them, and instead of celebrating that, we force them.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's go back to ask you about what some of the physical things that you do, because we are, as a society and as adults, have been trained not to connect with our bodies. And I think about a lot of the clients that we see. They're very, high level thinkers in organizations in terms of their work. So there's a lot of emphasis on their brain power. And so, what are some of the things that you're using in ways to help people connect into the body in a way that obviously, that it's a safe way for them to do it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're feeling good in their bodies. Kind of like my getting into the cold water didn't necessarily
Sure.
feel great, but I was able to connect with it in a positive way. What are some things you're doing with folks?
So I'll just share something that really connects to what you said. It's what I suggest folks do, and then I'll talk to you about what I do with them practically. The reality is, if I learn how to sit with uncomfortable feelings, like you're talking about, that's the best medicine because really, that's what I'm running away from. So to me, one of the best practices that somebody could do for themselves, and again, the challenge is when I suggest something to a client, most of the time it's so simple, so they won't do it. If I told
Mm,
them to go to an ayahuasca retreat in Mexico for a month, there's more of a chance that they'll do that than when I suggest them that they go to a yin yoga class. Yin yoga is a very gentle modality that we really learn to hold the poses for a long period of time, which means, AKA, there's discomfort there. I want to move, I want to fidget. It's just a practice or an opportunity to breathe into it and allow myself to continue feeling and stretch my capacity.
mm,
What I do with clients in session is anything that's beyond talking. So, for an example, if a client comes in and I just notice they're dysregulated, music is so powerful. So I'll say to them, "All right, I see you're not up for talking anyways. I don't want to hear you, Frank. I don't know if I say I don't want to hear you. Maybe I will sometime. Like, we don't want to talk. We know it didn't get us anywhere. Play me a song that really reflects how you're feeling right now." And you see them come in feeling all tense, and they play a song that really they feel seen, they feel heard, and you just notice this. I don't have to do anything. The music does the work for me. They just starts.
mm,
And that's such a beautiful opportunity for them to realize because the reality is they're only with me 1 hour a week. There's 163 other hours that really, if I don't give them tools, what am I doing for them?
mm,
In the sense of, I guess I could help you feel safe. It's a safe place for you. And I really want to support my clients in learning to start helping themselves. It's not, they're totally dependent on me. I don't want that for them. So, really using movement. There's another tool that I really like, which again is it's too simple. That's the problem. I did it today with a client. It's really people feel tense in their, let's say, the stomach. Okay. So in mindfulness language, right, we probably would say, all right, notice the tension. For some people, that's not safe. That's too
mm,
much. So one thing to think about or do is I'll say to clients, notice the outer edge of the discomfort. Get as close as you can to where it feels safe. So I'm not asking them to go into the discomfort and really feel it. I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to go right up to where, how close could you get? Just be curious about that. And all of a sudden, that resistance that people have about going to their body because they're so used to like, feel your feelings and notice. And it's like, it's too much. So, how do we get people into their body in a way that's gentle and safe? So, that's another way, getting them in body, but not too much. And making sure, and I think this is the piece of really the bodyfulness, showing them where they are supported in their body. We
mm.
just noticed, were you feeling uncomfortable in your body? Amazing. What the hell should I do with that? I don't know. I feel like shit now. Great. So one of the key things is, and sometimes it's ideal to do it first, where you notice support in your body, where you noticing an okay sensation. For me, most of the time, my earlobes are a pretty safe place, maybe because they almost have no feeling. But and then we have clients, we call it titrate, seesaw, back and forth, whatever they want to call it. Of I notice the uncomfortable sensation. I notice myself where I feel okay in my body. And you do that back and forth for 30 seconds, the clients start relaxing because they'll start to realize I'm uncomfortable. That's all they know. My whole body's uncomfortable. And it's like for some people that may be true, and we need other techniques. Maybe we have to use outside techniques of, "All right, what are you noticing outside of you that looks supportive? Oh, okay, I see this, the door looks supportive. Maybe it's physical stuff, putty or whatever people need. But most of the time, people could find a safe enough part in their body or a supportive side. So that's one way. One way is really coming inside because, trauma and our experiences make us not want to go there, make us want to run away. So that's one avenue. The other avenue, which I also love, is help people move because so many people are stuck and frozen. And you're like, all right, how could we get them to move? Because once they start moving, all of a sudden the energy starts moving. And instead of having them sit with their feelings, and the word for it, which people don't really resonate with because they're adults and they think it's stupid and pathetic, the word for it is really how do I help them start playing again,
Mm.
being more spontaneous. They look at me like I'm funny, and that's fine. But that's really the other option is building safety by doing things that are fun, being more childlike. If I took a client on the swings for 10 minutes, that probably would do more for him than him checking in and telling me everything that happened to him that week. It's just gonna be more relaxed, just be more at ease. All right, the world is not such a bad place. I could experience joy in my life. So to me, it's really these two avenues of trying to get clients to feel safe.
I love that. It's so funny that you said about the play. Just before we hopped on, I was going through some old videos, clearing storage off of my
Yeah,
drive. But I saw this, we had all these videos from class from a while back. And I must have been really focused on wanting to capture all of the games that we play. And we play so many games. Most controversial post I ever put on a swim instructors group was I just had a lesson, an hour and a half lesson with an adult, and we played games the whole time. I mean, people lost their minds how I could waste their money and then waste their time. And like, no, it was the best hour and a half. It integrated so many things. They did things they did not even think was possible for them to do in the water. And they just felt joy in the water after all this time of, of being an outsider to that particular space. I mean, this wasn't the first lesson. We did create safety and
of
other things that came
course.
first. But I knew, yeah, we can't work harder on perfecting something. Stop and pick up coins off the bottom of the pool, which turns out is really hard and interesting and fun to do. Yeah, it's so useful.
It's funny you say the coins thing. I remember I love swimming, I love water, and we used to have to do a deep water test. And one of the tests was they would throw these rings, on the bottom of the pool, and we'd have to go down and get them. It just reminded me of that. It's a good old swimming is just fun and like once you could get over the fear of it, just walking into a pool to me is fun. Just
Mhm.
sitting in there, splashing people. It's just such a joy to be able to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. That first piece, I mean, that's one of those first things of getting in when people have permission from themselves to get in and we get in and they're a little like, okay, now I got to do all the things. And we said, no, no, let's just like be in the water, like let's just feel what it feels like to be. It's so different. It's so otherworldly. And that being able to slow down and be able to have that space. So and this piece that you're talking about of feeling both the parts that are challenging and tense and we don't associate with good feelings, and also finding those places and those feelings that are grounded and do feel either neutral or positive or supportive. Yeah, that both of those things can be present at the same time and how useful. It's kind of like you were talking about before too, that therapy that goes back and forth, right? uh,
Right.
between one side of the brain and the other side. So useful. Nice. Well, Morty, is there anything else that you would love to share with people or want people to be able to hold or consider for themselves if they are wanting to bring healing or a sense of safety or unstuckness to their lives?
This is what I remind all my clients is that whatever they're dealing with, it's really challenging. It's really hard. Like that's why they're there. That's the reality. Whether they think it's as worse as other people, maybe it's not as bad. For them, this is their biggest nightmare. And change is also hard and it's
Mm.
also uncomfortable. And this is the line that I tell them, and it's really given people a lot of perspective. I tell my clients you could either, these are your two options, really. Getting well is hard. So either you could feel like shit getting well, or you could just feel like shit.
Mm.
But just remember that. You could either feel like shit getting well, or you could just feel like shit. It's your choice.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. And I'm going to point out something. When I asked you a question and you paused, and if you're listening to the podcast, you wouldn't see what Morty was doing in that pause. And I think it's really essential to what we're talking about. He stopped and he closed his eyes and he took a breath. And I could tell he was dropping down into his body. He was slowing down for a moment to find the answer. He didn't have the answer like this ready-made answer at the top of his head. He didn't have a sound bite instantly ready for me, which is totally fine. But where he found the answer is by dropping down into his body, slowing down, connecting with the people who really matter, right? You connected to your clients. That's what it looked like to me. You were connecting to the people that you have worked with, and a sentence came to you that has been very powerful and useful, and then spoke from there. So I think acknowledging that pause and seeing it makes such a huge difference in our lives to be able to, as we said in the beginning, show up authentically. You had this beautiful, authentic answer because you stopped and checked in with your body first. Do I have that right? Is that what I witnessed?
Yeah, right. Because I could have thought about what's the best answer. And it's like, I have no idea. To me, my GPS is my body, not my mind.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Beautiful. All right. If people need a GPS on how to find you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so for right now, I'm just online. I have a website. It's called thegamechangergroup.com. You could book a session with me to meet with me for free. I'm happy to chat. I am going to be on social media soon. I'm taking that leap of faith. So
Mhm.
soon to be able to find me. But until then, just feel free to reach out. I'm happy to meet with people, consult with them. I might not be the right answer. I may know somebody else. And one thing will be for sure, we'll have a good conversation. We'll have fun. That I know. So just know that.
Nice. I love it. I love it. Who couldn't use a good conversation and have fun? Then you don't have to be feeling shitty.
Exactly. That's my thing.
That's amazing. I love it. Okay, thank you so much. This was really great conversation. I hope that people found some benefit into it. I know I did in terms of having some new nuances on some of these things that we do already, and but how to really expanding any of these things that we're doing, swimming or therapy or answering people's text messages, like you said, when we're doing it in a way that tunes into ourselves, it changes our lives. And that's what this is all about. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.
Bye.